everyone. Bom dia. Bom dia a todos. We're very pleased as the President of the U.S. Angola Chamber of Commerce to bring you this panel on investing in Angola this morning. Angola has a fantastic story to tell. There's been a lot of robust change, a lot of reform. As opposed to my actually doing the opening remarks for this panel, I'm going to call on someone who is highly, highly competent in the area of being able to do so. I will first call on Dr. Abreu. He's the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Angola, and he will make some opening comments to help us set this panel, and then we will begin with our questioning.
Thank you, Janine. First of all, and as this is our first time participating on a summit like we are here today, I don't know if you are hearing it. Okay, good. I would like first to thank the organizers of this event, the magazine, African Investor Magazine, as well as the NYSC and the Euronext, for the opportunity and honor that the Angolan delegation has to share some of the recent developments of our economy, as well as the approach that the government is taking in the implementation of the National Development Plan. And I would possibly address, give you a very brief overview on our recent developments, starting from the impact of the crisis in Angola in 2009, 2008. We were growing at a very fast pace before the impact of the crisis. Angola was, before 2002, in a long period of war, and after 2002 we were able to indeed initiate a very comprehensive approach for the development and growth of our economy. So between 2002 and 2008, the idea was based on two pillars, mainly, which were the reconstruction of the country, as well as the macroeconomic stability as ways for sustainable growth. Indeed, we were able to reach those objectives until the impact of the crisis in 2008, 2009, which indeed evidenced the need for our enhancement of our macroeconomic framework, as well as the way for diversification of our economy. The Angolan economy, as you know, is very dependent on the oil production and exploration. It accounts for 76% of our budget revenue, as well as 98% of our exports. And that dependency was extremely evident during the period of crisis, where the revenue, the fiscal revenue, as well as the revenue from the exports declined dramatically. So that raised the issue of having or introducing and accelerate the process of diversification of our revenue streams, both on the fiscal side and the external accounts, and obviously continue the stabilization process in our economy, providing that we had a decrease process of on our inflation, but obviously allowing growth to happen within the economy. Our international reserves have been growing since 2002, and from 2002 until 2008, the reserves grew 10 times during that period. The reason for that was the domestic savings coming from the fiscal surpluses, as well as the current account surpluses, which were elements that provided the opportunity for growth on our reserves. Obviously that the crisis had an impact on those reserves, on the public savings side, and the idea of establishing the fiscal buffers and the macroeconomic buffers to continue support the need for public investments by the country, and obviously contributing for the growth, was one of the main concerns of the government during the preparation of this new National Development Plan. So we are currently addressing not only the issue of having the continuous opportunity for investment on the infrastructure, which is one of the challenges that most of the countries in the emerging markets face, and obviously trying also to improve the quality or the stability of our financial system and our macroeconomic framework. So we are currently addressing three main issues or three main areas which are under extreme or very deep structural adjustment. Obviously, one is the macroeconomic framework and the improvement of our macroeconomic framework, both on the fiscal side as well as on the monetary and external account side. And a third element there, obviously, the dissemination and the transparency issue on the data that the government is putting across and available to any investor or international partner. On the financial system regulatory and supervisory framework, we've been very active and at the central bank level, and obviously we have also on this panel some colleagues from other regulatory entities which have been addressing issues on the convergence of the Angolan regulatory framework to the international standards. So we are now completing Basel II principles implementation, as well as addressing Basel III, and we have the Capital Markets Commission and the Insurance Commission being now established, moving forward towards the openness of those two important segments on our financial system. Currently, the banking system in Angola comprises 23 banks, and it's the most or the biggest sector on our financial system. It accounts for 98% of our financial system. So when we talk about our banking industry or even our financial system, we are talking about a very liquid and a very robust financial system with no leverage coming from any debt instruments or even capital openness of our financial institutions. And that's why, and giving the sense of need to continuously invest in the infrastructure of the country and also on education, we have to converge to the international standards, allowing our financial institutions to also participate on the global capital markets, and obviously allowing investors to also participate on our domestic market. On the market infrastructure and market integrity, very profound changes have also been introduced. In 2011, we finalized the financial system assessment program by the IMF, which gave us a clear vision of what are the challenges for development of our national payment system and also the clearance system. One important element there on the market integrity is obviously the issue of compliance, AML and CFT, which Angola have been addressing with a very strong sense and high level commitment of establishing a very strong and comprehensive AML and CFT system. I would stop here and wait for any questions, and we'll be pleased to come back to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that introduction and that overview of Angola today. I'd like to start with the questions that we have before us to our panelists. And again, I'll come back to you, Dr. Abreu. We've heard a lot about the establishment of the Sovereign Wealth Fund in Angola, and we'd like you to tell us a bit about the fund, outline the investment policy framework that the fund will be pursuing, and talk to us about some of the co-investment opportunities that exist for global institutional investors to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, the idea of establishment of the Angolan Sovereign Wealth Fund is not new. During or before the impact of the crisis, discussions arose in regards of the establishment of a savings instrument, because the Angolan international reserves are growing at a very fast pace. As I mentioned before, they grew between 2002 to 2008 10 times. So In 2002, we were at a level of $2.3 billion in terms of international reserves. In 2008, we reached the $20 billion mark. So the idea was to establish a savings instrument that would allow for the future generations, saving for the future generations. Obviously that the impact of the crisis indeed postponed the establishment of such instrument, because in the end of the day, the crisis and the dramatic reduction on the fiscal revenue endanger partially some of the infrastructure investments which were actually on the way. So the idea improved, and currently the scenario is that the Sovereign Wealth Fund would have these two main roles. One, obviously the role of savings for future generations, but also contributing for the sustainable investment on the infrastructure projects and very strategic projects of the country. So those are the main two roles of our Sovereign Wealth Fund. Obviously, and during that time, government was also able to establish the stability buffers on our fiscal framework and also monetary and external accounts. So this Sovereign Wealth Fund will not have a stability role. We have other instruments to provide the stability role. The Sovereign Wealth Fund of Angola will be mainly dedicated to savings for future generations, whereby investing on a diversified portfolio of assets, and on the other side, obviously looking into the continuous sustainability of investment in infrastructure. Obviously that looking on both sides of the asset liability framework, the public-private partnerships would be obviously very welcome and positive in the sense of allowing a stronger contribution on the infrastructure investment side of Angola and the continuity of those projects. And obviously on the sense of investment on the diversified portfolio of assets, we will have the various stakeholders and playmakers in the international global capital markets. Obviously, the main concern of the Angolan government now is the maintain the social and political stability, as well as the macroeconomic stability as sources of attraction and opportunity for international investors. But obviously, we need to have also the sense that we are talking about a country which only had 10 years of opportunity to establish a comprehensive national development plan. So we are still a country working in progress to, in the end of the day, position ourselves as one of the major economies in sub-Saharan Africa.
Thank you, Dr. Abreu. That leads nicely to the second question that I wanted to pose. When you talk about private-public partnerships and the attraction of outside investors, let me now turn to Mr. Gilberto Luta, who's the director of the Tax Reform Unit in the Ministry of Finance, and ask him a question to tell us about the strategy to create a conducive environment for long-term investors in Angola. Mr. Luta.
Thanks very much. I will start to beg a pardon for the audience for my terrible English, but I must talk, so I will talk. So as you know, there are some factors that affect the investment decision, like market size and political and legal and macroeconomic stability, access to infrastructures, available and cost of qualified work, financial costs, access to raw materials, access to export markets, and, of course, the tax factors. Government of Angola established a program from tax reform in 2010, and this program have three major goals or objectives, like diversification of the source revenues of the Angola state, guarantee of the high social and tax justice as well, equitable in redistribution of wealth, and developing the condition for the balanced and sustained economy development of Angola Republic. Well, the setting of the stable tax condition, the leverage investment results in a calculation of 5 elements, like rates, benefits, and service quality, transparency, and establishment of legislation. And there, some of these factors of these elements represent direct costs of the taxes, and the others indirect cost of the taxes. I can say, if the reform that is my primary objective in this approach, is the reform has already introduced various change in 3 specific areas, like streamlining from reduction of the categories on stamp duties, classification of the taxation rates on capital employee, and the extension of the tax base from obligation to make a tax deduction at source to regarding a real estate tax, and reinforcing the real estate register, station of the incidence base of the tax on capital employed, and a station of the incidence base on taxes on consumption. We also do reduction, or we expect to do reduction on industrial tax rate, reduction on the real estate tax rate, and reductions on customs fees on industrial equipment. I can say also that the reform in process aims to rebalancing the tax rate of companies in line with the OECD countries. Matter of fact, we expect have an increase of revenues individuals about 30% of the total of the revenues in general. I can say the tax reform is one of the major program and ambitious program from the Angola's government, but it's not the only one, because for increase the environment from invested, Angola governments also do another programs like the or laws, like the laws of private investment, and law from micro enterprises and small enterprises. And I think it's a lot of things that we do until now to reinforce this environment from all investors and from national and foreign investors. I think I can stop from here.
Thank you, Mr. Luther. The next question I'm going to pose is to Mr. Archer Mangueira. Mr. Mangueira is the president of the Capital Markets Commission in Angola. Mr. Mangueira, there is much interest in your plans to launch Angola's stock exchange. Can you tell us where you are in the process and how investors may be able to access opportunities?
Thank you, Jenny. The future Angolan Stock Exchange will be a government-owned institution. At the moment, the executive has nominated a commission that will select the electronic infrastructure for trading and post-trading systems on way of establishment of the Angolan Stock Exchange. During the first semester of 2014, we predicted that operator specialized in trading foreign debt instrument will be able to do so. At this stage, the post-trading system will be provided by the central bank, the BNA, during 2014. We predicted that the remaining market infrastructure, namely post-trading services and regulatory framework, including the new security law, will enable the launch of the stock and corporate debt market. The admission of security to exchange, especially stocks, will be subjected to the fulfillment of set of governance standards. We emphasize that regard to governance and disclosure standards, there is a long way to go to reach the international benchmark. Having that in mind, we produced a code of conduct with good business practices and also created an innovative department that will aid potentially listed companies to reach the appropriate standard of corporate governance. Consequently, despite the creation of regulatory and infrastructure conditions for equity trading on regulated market in 2014, providing a window of opportunity for some companies to be listed already this year, but rise of public companies in sufficient number to establishment a liquidity pool with continuous trading session on stock exchange market are only expected in 2016. Regarding the access to the opportunities provided by the Angolan market, at the moment, the main restriction is the existence foreign exchange controls, which are under revision. Fortunately, at the moment, there is ongoing debate on how to address the capital and financial account issue in order to allow foreign capital inflows and outflows. A lot of ideas are on the table. For instance, in initial phase, we can allow portfolio investment provided that those flows do not create short-term speculative volatility that can have a significant negative impact to our national strategic stability objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mangueira. I'd like to turn now to hear a little bit from some of our private sector representatives as well on some of the opportunities that are currently available in Angola. I'll first turn to Mr. Luis Leles. He's the executive board member of BAI, which is the Banco Angolano de Investimentos. And the question is, what are the investment projects in Angola you are prioritizing for your clients? What recommendations would you give to institutional investors who are interested in participating in those projects?
Thank you, Janine. Well, I would like to thank you, everybody, for this opportunity.
Luis, a little louder.
Sorry. Why am I nervous? I'm not supposed to be nervous. The Angolan government has designed what's called the 2025 vision, and this vision indicates 9 pillars of 9 sets of interdependent activities, also known as clusters, and they interact between themselves. These clusters are water, energy or power, as it was mentioned here, agro-industry, housing, transportation, logistical platforms, mineral resources, oil and gas, textile industry, and tourism. Those are the sectors that we are also recommending to people that are going to Angola and making the investment. Just to give you an idea, the governmental initiative for this type of projects is appointing for investments of $50.7 billion between 2013 to 2017 in power generation, transportation, and energy represents 67% of it. We're talking around $16 billion. That is the main sector. We cannot develop anything else without a proper functioning power generation, transportation, and distribution system. We still are very dependent on oil and gas, but there is a huge push to diversify the economy. What I would recommend to people that are looking into Angola is to look at the National Development Program, which is public, and it can be retrieved from the sites of the Ministry of Planning or Economic Planning and Ministry of Finance. It's 200 pages, it's in Portuguese, again, but it's easy to read. It's even, just hire a good translator and he will make sure that you understand that. The recommendations for people that are going to Angola are very simple. Please make sure that you have a clear and deep understanding of the Angolan legal and regulatory framework. Sometimes people go to Angola and say, well, in the US or in Portugal, we do things like that. Well, Angola is a sovereign country. We have our own legal and regulatory framework. There are some legal counselors that came in our delegation. Please talk to them. We try to be aligned to the best practices. But again, being a sovereign country, we do have our own constitution and our laws that need to be fulfilled. And then also there is ANIP. ANIP is the Angolan Promotion of Investment, National Promotion of Investment Agency. They're based in DC, and they're doing a very good job interacting with potential investors and finding also opportunities and indicating where the opportunities are in Angola. The second recommendation that I make is make sure you build friendships through networking. don't come on Thursday. Don't fly in on Thursday. Have a meeting on Friday and fly out on Friday evening. It doesn't happen like that. You know, if you do this, until people invite you to come to our houses, you have not concluded a business. Yeah, you know, just exchanging business cards does not mean that you have concluded a business. You know, make sure that you stay for a week, 2 weeks, even though it might seem expensive, but if you're thinking long term, then you will be successful. That leads me to my third recommendation. Think long term, be patient. This is what the Chinese are doing in Angola, and that's why they're successful. They have a 99-year plan. That's the way that people should think. Investing, I always say to people that come to Angola, investing in Angola is for marathon runners, not for sprinters. Usain Bolt will not be successful in Angola. You know, that's why the Ethiopians are, successful, because they can run 42 miles or so, I don't know. And the fourth recommendation that I make is do not cut corners. Do not cut corners. Play fair and by the rules. Play fair and by the rules. Sometimes it will seem frustrating. Things take a little bit longer. But remember that we became independent in 1975, but the Civil War only ended in 2002. And then, even though it has been 13 years, but still there's a lot going on. The diversification of the economy, training people. So if you go with a very well-designed long-term strategy, stick to it, build friendships, not networks, build friendships, then you will have success, as most of the companies that are operating in Angola are doing. Finally, when you go to Angola, look for us, Banco Angolano de Investimento, the largest private bank in Angola, set up 17 years ago. I really need to say that because my competitor is right there, and he's going to be the last one to talk. But we're just the largest private bank in Angola, and again, like the lady from Botswana mentioned, yeah, okay, we're the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luis. That does lead nicely into our final speaker this morning, who is Pedro Coelho, who is the CEO of Standard Bank in Angola. And he, too, will give us some advice about, from a private sector perspective, about what it takes to invest in Angola, what people should look for when they're entering the Angolan market. And so I will turn over to Pedro.
Thank you, Jenny. So since my colleague has told most of it, I'll be very brief. So basically, in terms of key recommendations, I would say again, apart from what has been said in terms of the sectors, apart from oil and gas, mining, power and infrastructure, agribusiness, I would say you should also focus on the general industry that will replace imports, because as you know, there's still a big flow of imports into the country, and we need to cater for the demand of the rising middle income class. So I think this will be also, there's a range of opportunities in that sector, and I guess this is not only common to Angola but across Africa. I reinforce the message that my colleague referred about ANIP. I think it has a lot of benefits, particularly on the tax benefits that you can get, so you can negotiate special conditions depending on your particular investment project. So it is important that beforehand you really think how much you're going to invest in Angola, and you get the right advisor, to get you the best benefits possible and guarantee the repatriation of dividends. The other important aspect is you have to be prepared for high setup costs. As you know, the cost of living is high in Angola, although it has a tendency to get cheaper as more offer is available in the country, but for the time being, as you know, it is quite expensive. Qualified human resources are scarce and expensive, so the focus is certainly for you as investors to train people and to get some retention mechanisms to guarantee the success of your business. So that way you can invest in the human resources, so you guarantee the future having Angolans qualified in your company. A local partnership is key to better understand the market and to get the necessary institutional support. Of course, it's not mandatory, but being a country with very specific points which you don't find anywhere else in Africa due to the language, the legal system, the way Angola operates. So I think it's beneficial that you look for a good local institutional partner. Do not underestimate competition. I think a lot of people come to Angola by thinking that it's just knocking on death people, but it's not the case. So in general, investments are being done using state-of-the-art technology and systems. So the country is leapfrogging a number of waves of evolution that other countries went through, and is basically using the best practices in the country to the extent possible. Again, the other aspect is to use Angola as a base for expansion into Africa. This might seem a bit odd, but actually no more than, you can do no more than other companies already doing, being based in Angola. A number of these companies are actually having their base in Angola to expand across Africa. First, because of course they have an important investment in Angola, being Angola one of the key growth markets in sub-Saharan Africa. And secondly, because geographically Angola is very well positioned to really cater to really move across the borders and to be able to connect with other neighboring countries. So we have seen a number of multinationals actually using Angola as a hub to move elsewhere. So I guess that's it for my, I would say that, again, you have Standard Bank as an alternative to buy an international bank that has been 150 years in Africa, and that, of course, knows Angola and can give you experience, can give you the idea of the experience of other potential entrepreneurs that have been in the country, so more than happy to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. I think with that, I'd like to open it up to the floor to see if there are questions or clarifications that the audience would like to pose to the panel at this time.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lourdes Caposo Fernandes, the founder of LCF Legal Counsel Group, an Angolan lawyer. Thank you very much for the panel. I am going to ask two questions. One to Mr. Luther regarding the tax reform, and another one to BNA, Mr. Abreu. But before that, I would like to congratulate some of you as leaders and investors who were present on African Leadership Forum on Saturday, and we said that price is the family when we are working too hard. But for us, if you go to Angola without a lawyer, price is failing. So make sure you comply with the recommendations from Lelis to get a local lawyer. To help you, we are going to base in Houston, close to you. Just come to us. And then the big question I have to Mr. Luther. Angola has very good tax incentives to go there. And as one of the big companies in the world, Coca-Cola, said one of the trips we did to South Africa to promote investment, stop going to the internet check in Angola. Go there and your returns and your financial returns are going to be huge. So, but they have very good tax incentives for you to invest there. I would like Mr. Luther to emphasize that because it's very quite unique to find 10 years, 15 years incentives if you make an investment. For Mr. Abreu, my question is about compliance. Most of the investors have FCPA to comply. We know lawyers and we can help. Have anti-bribery to comply. So how BNA is dealing with those international regulations? If you have money laundering rules, I would like you to talk about compliance for the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lourdes. I think we had another question, the gentleman there.
Bon dia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I'm from Mauritius. We are a stock exchange. I mean, we are listed on the main board in the property sector. So I heard from some friends that you are doing housing projects. So I'm quite interested to look in the bigger market. But when is your stock exchange going to be ready? So that, I mean, at least there's some exchange. On the tax question, of course, I would be interested to know more about the rates. What is the incentives, as the lawyer said. Yeah, thank you.
If we don't have a third, then I'll take these right now. Mr. Luther, I think you have two questions, both on the incentives and the tax rates for investors. And then Dr. Abreu, you have the question on FCPA, and Dr. Mangueira on when exactly the stock exchange will be ready.
Thanks, Union, and thanks for make you suffer a little bit more. Actually, in Angola, we have a new investment law, private investment law, and this law established a progressive system from incentives, tax incentives. I want to mean how much is the value that you invested, and you take a biggest incentives. We have basically three areas. Area 1 or A, Area B, and Area C. And from Area A is Luanda, capital of Angola, and some major cities in the coast, and the incentives is very low when you compare that other areas like B and C. That's happened because the Angolan government wants, of course, is logic, reduce the regional asymmetries. And when you go to interior, you get very, very big incentives. Like I can tell you from industrial tax from rate is 1 and until 10 years from incentives. That's mean you can stay 10 years without pay any industrial taxes. If you invest in area C, you have in area B 1 at 8 years. If you are invested in this area, I need to tell you that this is not automatic. You know, it is the ANIP or Angola government may appreciate your plan for investment and determine how is the rate in this how can I say
range.
In this range. And it's another possibility, extraordinary possibility, that if you make a very, very, very huge investment, about $50 million US dollars. You can benefit the extraordinary incentives beyond that I mentioned. Thank you.
Dr. Abreu?
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the question. In regards to the compliance, the Angolan compliance framework, yes, indeed, the central bank was called in 2010 to start leading the Angolan implementation of the Angolan system for AML and CFT. Since then, we have tried to implement all the legal and regulatory framework in regards to the financial institutions which are regulated by the central bank. But in the end of the day, we were able to establish the Angolan AML and CFT law, as well as develop the Angolan strategic plan of implementation of the AML and CFT system. Since then, we have been already evaluated. We have a mutual evaluation report which was done by the World Bank and is public, so you can actually have access to that report, whereby Angola is assessed in regards to its technical compliance. So we have currently two levels of compliance. One is the technical compliance, which is the part that Angola is now addressing and finalizing, and the second part, which is effective implementation, which is currently underway. So as our strategic plan focuses principally on the financial institutions regulated by the central bank, which represent 98% of our financial system, the central bank had a very strong role in trying to introduce all the set of regulation in regards to the core and key recommendations from Financial Action Task Force. So in regards to customer due diligence, know your customer obligations, the correspondent banking issues, the beneficial ownership issues, as well as the training capacity of the employees of the banks and the market operators. So currently, I would say that we are now and formally a member of the regional organization that, which is an FSRB from Financial Action Task Force, which is a Zamalek. Angola is now a member. In 2014, we'll be hosting the Council of Ministers meeting of that organization, as well as taking the presidency of that organization forward for the period of 1 year, in the end giving our contribution for raising the AML and CFT standards in the region. The implementation, well, we have here the private sector as well, and obviously that as an emerging market, we face most of the challenges that other countries face. Financial inclusion is an issue. You know that we have 28% of our population bancarized, unfortunately, and we are currently developing our national financial inclusion plan, which will allow the growth of our banking access from our population. But that's a tremendous challenge if we look at the concerns on the AML and CFT issues for all emerging markets, and Angola is it's no difference. Obviously that we have also issues on the implementation with some bankers and some banks. Not everybody is working at the same pace, but in the end of the day, I think that most of the main banks in the country have addressed the issue very profoundly and focused, and we are confident that in the post-evaluation process, which will be subject to, we will be able to continue receiving the compliments from Financial Action Task Force, which addresses Angola as one of the countries committed and developing a framework for AML and CFT system. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abreu. I think we've come to time. So first, I'd like to really thank my panel, and I'd ask for you guys to acknowledge their contributions this morning. I would like to thank Hubert and the team at AI for having Angola and a special panel on Angola this year for the first time. We really do appreciate that. I would also like to recognize the presence of the Angolan ambassador to the United States, His Excellency Alberto Bento Ribeiro, who is seated there. And just as the panelists have indicated, we have come with a very robust team this morning, and so in addition to the representatives that we have here on the panel, we do have representatives from ANIP, from the Diamond Company and Diama, from other banks, from the business sector, from Sonangol, the national oil company, from legal firms. You've heard from one of our lawyers, and of course, you have the U.S. Angola Chamber of Commerce to serve as your faithful conduit into Angola. Thank you.
Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.